Hello, and thank you for attending today's webinar, The Pharma Trust Paradox, From Silence to Participation, presented by ICUC Social and Fierce Pharma. Before we begin, here are a few housekeeping items. To learn more about our speakers, click beneath their name to read a detailed bio. Available downloads are in the resources window. If you accidentally close any of the windows, you can reopen it by clicking the icons on the left. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand within 24 hours. And finally, please submit your questions as you think of them via the Submit Questions window. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator from ICUC Social, Elizabeth Smith, VP of Client Success. Elizabeth, over to you.
Trust has become one of the pharmaceutical industry's greatest challenges and greatest opportunities. While patients are more connected, informed, and engaged than ever before, many remain hesitant to participate in conversations with pharmaceutical companies. This has created a paradox. The need for meaningful patient engagement has never been greater, yet many voices remain silent. Today, we'll look at the factors shaping trust, the consequences of disengagement, and the opportunities for pharmaceutical organizations to build stronger, more credible relationships that empower patients to move from passive observers to active participants in their healthcare journey. I'm Elizabeth Smith, VP of Regulated Client Success here at ICUC Social. I'm joined today by Associate Director Elena Carruthers and Solution Strategist Gabe Rodriguez. Here at ICUC Social, we've been working with pharma and other regulated industries for 10 plus years, helping brands reach patients and HCPs on social in a compliant manner. Over to you, Gabe.
As we thought through this concept, the question kept coming up. How can two things be true at the same time? We're seeing incredible advances in science, treatment, and becoming more targeted. Outcomes continue to improve, and the pace of innovation is accelerating. But at the same time, online conversations tell a very different story. Across millions of discussions, we continue to see negative sentiment towards pharmaceutical industries. That disconnect is what we call the pharma trust paradox. This isn't a reflection of science, it's a reflection of perception. Patients aren't only evaluating innovation anymore. They're evaluating affordability, accessibility, ethics, transparency, and whether companies feel present in the conversations that matter most to them. The challenge isn't simply creating better medicines, it's ensuring those innovations are understood and trusted. When we look deeper into conversations, we believe something important emerges. This isn't simply a trust issue, it's fundamentally a participation issue. Patients are asking questions every day across social platforms, forums, Reddit, creator communities, and more so through AI. Those conversations don't pause because pharma isn't present. Instead, someone else is helping fill the gap. Sometimes that's another patient sharing their experience, which can be incredibly valuable, but sometimes it's misinformation, incomplete information, or narratives that go completely unchallenged. Silence creates space for others to shape perception. If organizations want to influence trust, they first have to participate in the conversations where trust is actually being built.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. I want to dive a little bit into what participation from pharma actually looks like. One of the biggest mistakes many organizations make is assuming patients consume information the same way they did 10 or even 5 years ago. The reality is that patients today are incredibly informed, intentional, and motivated. For example, when someone receives a diagnosis, they're not casually scrolling. They're searching for answers. They're looking for context, reassurance, and understanding. They want depth. We've spent years optimizing for attention, clicks, impressions, engagement rates, but patients are optimizing for understanding. The message we're seeing repeatedly across online communities is simple. Tell me something I don't know or don't bother. Patients increasingly value substance over snippets, meaning over memes, and lived experience over assumptions. For pharmaceutical companies, that means success isn't about creating more content. It's about creating more meaningful content that genuinely helps patients wherever they are in their journey. When we think about engagement, we naturally focus on what we can see, the comments, likes, shares, and mentions. But the majority of patient engagement is actually invisible. Many patients are what we call silent seekers. They read extensively, they monitor conversations, they consume information privately, and then they make highly personal healthcare decisions based on what they've learned. The loudest voices in a community are rarely representative of the entire audience. Someone may never comment on a post, never ask a question publicly, and never interact with a brand account, but they're still listening. They're still learning, and they're still forming opinions. Trust isn't built solely through visible interactions. It's built through the quality, consistency, and relevance of information available during these quiet moments when patients are searching for answers. So what happens when pharmaceutical companies choose not to participate in these conversations? The gap doesn't stay empty. Instead, negative narratives become more prominent. Misinformation and disinformation spread unchecked. Communities become increasingly polarized, and positive stories about innovation, patient outcomes, scientific progress, often get drowned out. What's important here is that trust isn't being lost because pharma is doing the wrong thing. It's losing trust because pharma is often absent during the moments when patients are seeking information, reassurance, and guidance. And that includes patients that are actively engaging online and those silent seekers we talked about. Conversations are happening regardless. Questions are being asked regardless. Narratives are being formed regardless. The choice isn't whether the conversation exists. The choice is whether pharma is present and contributing to it. Many organizations respond to these challenges by creating more content, but this isn't fundamentally a content problem. It's an ecosystem problem. Trust is built through connected systems working together. It starts with listening, absorbing what patients are actually discussing. Listening creates understanding. Understanding drives strategy. Strategy informs content and engagement. Content and engagement with the community generates new insights. And throughout every step, compliance enables safe participation. When any one of these components operates independently, opportunities are missed and trust gaps emerge. The organizations that will succeed are the ones that stop treating listening, strategy, content, and engagement as separate functions and start treating them as an integrated trust-building ecosystem. Trust isn't built through campaigns alone. It's built through connected systems that allow organizations to continuously listen, learn, adapt, and participate.
Over the past decade, we've watched the patient journey evolve time over time. First, patients utilized WebMD, then moved to searching Google. They compared websites, read articles, visited forums, and pieced information together themselves. Today, that behavior is changing again. Increasingly, patients are asking AI a question and receiving one synthesized answer. That changes the dynamic completely. The first interaction patients have within the healthcare information may no longer be with your website or your social channels. It may be with an AI-generated response that's been informed by everything available online, which creates an important strategic question. If AI is becoming the first conversation, how do we influence the answer? The answer isn't trying to optimize for AI itself. It's optimizing what AI learns from. AI rewards trusted, authoritative, and consistently reinforced information. That means creating expert content that answers real patient questions, not simply repeating brand messages. It means participating in patient communities where appropriate. It means amplifying authentic patient voices along clinical evidence, and potentially the most important, continuously listening so you understand the questions that patients are asking before they become larger issues. In many ways, social listening becomes even more valuable in an AI-driven world because it helps organizations understand the information ecosystems that's shaping future answers.
I want to talk a little bit about trends. So every year we are presented with a new list of trends, predictions, platform changes, and technology forecasts. And while those conversations are valuable, they're often distracting us from the real work that needs to happen. Patients don't experience trends. They experience diagnosis. They experience fear. They experience treatment decisions. They experience uncertainty, frustration, and hope. That's why strategy cannot be trend-led. It has to be reality-led. The organizations that thrive in 2026 won't necessarily be the ones chasing every new trend. They'll be the ones building capabilities that help them understand patients more effectively, engage more authentically, and respond more intelligently. Transformation doesn't come from trend adoption. It comes from building the organizational capability to understand reality and respond accordingly. This brings us to the BEAT formula, a framework designed to help organizations move from passive observation to active participation. The first step is build trust. Trust develops when organizations amplify authentic patient voices and demonstrate a genuine commitment to patient outcome. The second step is engage communities. Every thoughtful interaction creates an opportunity to strengthen relationships and encourage meaningful dialogue in your communities. The third is address concerns. Misinformation and negative narratives don't disappear on their own. They require proactive engagement grounded in understanding and empathy. And finally, transform narratives. By sharing stories of innovation, progress, and positive patient outcomes, organizations can help ensure those stories aren't overshadowed by negativity. But an important point here is that none of this works without understanding. BEAT depends on listening at scale, understanding what patients are experiencing, and translating those insights into action. When we compare traditional brand thinking with patient-centered thinking, a clear difference emerges. Traditional approaches rely heavily on periodic research, personas, campaign planning, dashboards, and assumptions. Patient-centered organizations operate differently. They listen continuously. They focus on real people rather than static personas. They prioritize understanding over awareness. They engage in communities rather than simply launching campaigns. The truth is that data alone is no longer a competitive advantage. Almost every organization has access to data. The advantage comes from understanding what the data actually means. The brands that will win are those that remain closest to the patient reality, understanding not only what patients say, but what they feel, why they behave the way they do, and what support they need at each moment of their journey.
Let's talk about advantages. We often hear social listening described as another report or dashboard. We think that's underselling what it actually can become. A super insightful colleague of mine once said, "What if we thought of social listening as a superpower?" At its best, social listening is an intelligence layer. Every conversation teaches us something. Those insights improve strategy, they improve content, they improve community engagement, they strengthen compliance conversations. They even improve AI discoverability because they help organizations understand what patients are actually searching for. Instead of treating listening as a quarterly activity, it becomes a continuous learning cycle where every conversation helps inform the next business decision. Once listening becomes continuous, it starts producing a far more than interesting observations. It generates actionable intelligence. Instead of assuming what patients need, we begin mapping real patient journeys, emotional behaviors, conversation themes, and really unmet needs. Those insights then feed directly into engagement frameworks, content planning, response matrices, and strategic decision-making. The goal isn't and shouldn't be simply to collect more data. It's to replace assumptions with evidence. Because once we truly understand patients, not just clinically, but emotionally and digitally, we're in a much stronger position to engage in ways that actually build trust.
So this slide illustrates something incredibly important. Patient journeys are emotional journeys. Using the example of an unexpected heart attack, we can see that patients move through multiple emotional stages, from shock and denial to fear and anxiety to anger and frustration, and then eventually towards acceptance, adaptation, empowerment, and resilience. And importantly, this journey is not linear. Patients don't move neatly from one stage to the other. They can move forward, backward, or revisit emotions multiple times through their experience. Each stage creates different information needs, different questions, and different digital behaviors. A patient experiencing fear needs something very different than a patient experiencing empowerment. This is why generic communication strategies often fail. If we truly understand where patients are emotionally, we can provide the right information, support, and engagement at the right time. That's what transforms communications from broadcasting into meaningful participation.
One of the most valuable things listening allows us to do is understand what emotional stages have corresponding digital behaviors. Someone experiencing fear or uncertainty often searches privately. Someone experiencing frustration may vent publicly. As patients begin accepting and adapting, we often see them engaging in communities, sharing educational content, or supporting others facing similar challenges. Eventually, many of them become advocates themselves. This is incredibly important because patients don't need the same information at every stage of their journey. By understanding where someone is emotionally, organizations can create content, resources, and engagement strategies that are more relevant and genuinely supportive.
So from assumption to reality, this is ultimately the shift we're encouraging organizations to make, moving from assumptions to reality. For years, many strategies have been built around what brands think patients need, broad trends, and one-size-fits-all approaches. But today's environment requires something different. It requires understanding patient reality. It requires mapping emotion alongside behavior. It requires contextual engagement that reflects where patients actually are rather than where we assume they are. When organizations make this shift, everything improves. Teams become more informed. Content becomes more relevant. Insights become deeper. Communities become more meaningful. And most importantly, trust becomes easier to build because communications are grounded in reality rather than assumptions.
Now to make it work. One of the biggest concerns we hear whenever participation is discussed is compliance. But compliance shouldn't be viewed as the reason not to engage. It should be viewed as the framework that allows organizations to engage safely and consistently. With structured engagement models, approved response pathways, clearly defined escalation processes, and alignment between medical, legal, regulatory, brand, and community teams, participation becomes scalable. The objective isn't controlled conversation. It's controlled, compliant participation that allows organizations to be present when the patient needs them most.
As we close, I'd like to come back to the central idea behind today's discussion. The trust paradox doesn't exist because people have stopped believing in science. It exists because many people don't feel heard. Across every stage of the patient journey, we're seeing a consistent theme. Patients want understanding, participation, and meaningful engagement. The solution isn't more campaigns, it's not more messaging, and it's not more trends. The solution is showing up differently. That's why we developed the BEAT formula, a system focused on building trust, engaging communities, addressing concerns, and transforming narratives through a foundation of listening, and understanding. If we want to change how the world sees pharma, we first need to change how pharma shows up in the world. And the organizations that make that shift from silence to participation, from assumptions to understanding, from broadcasting to listening, will be the organizations that rebuild trust for the future.
Thanks, Elena. So as you can tell, we're incredibly passionate about safety case monitoring, strategy, social listening, content creation, and more. We'd love to talk to you about how we can help. So scan the QR code or visit our website to contact us if you're interested. Okay, I see a few questions in here. Keep them coming. Throw some in as you think of things. Ooh, we're going to start with a tough one. Let's see who wants to take this. How do I convince compliance to engage on social?
I can touch on that since I spoke a little bit about compliance earlier.
Go for it.
So
Yeah,
if I was to convince compliance, I'd start with risk reduction, not social media. I'd show teams how to proactively engage, and how that engagement reduces misinformation. It can create consistency, and enables controlled, approved responses rather than reacting during a crisis. I
I
think
like
the
that because, oh, sorry, Gabe. I like that because it speaks to what compliance likes, like some control over the narrative instead of like, hey, we just want to open things up and it's the wild, wild west on the internet. We know they don't love to hear that, and they're always looking for the guardrails. I think also coming in with that plan, having your response matrix ready and escalation paths and all of those things. We've seen a lot of compliance get on board with open engagement when you have all that ready.
And I think
yeah,
that in experience,
good.
creating a partnership across
Yeah,
all of the
that's what I was going to say.
is really important.
Yeah.
It's not a conversation that you start when you have your campaign or your strategy already thought out and in place. It's a let's partner from inception so that we can be lockstep all through the process.
Yeah, I found that working directly with pharmacovigilance, and regulatory and medical, right from the inception or thinking about a campaign is very helpful because a lot of them might just not understand certain things about social or, about the AI piece that we talked about, the misinformation, disinformation, the narrative and information gaps. They might not be aware of all of the kind of nuances on social. So starting that conversation early is important.
We've got a lot to say about compliance. We could talk all day about that one, but we'll move on to the next question. I like this. We're a small team. Where should we start?
I can jump in because I've worked with a few small teams in my time here at ICUC, and uh, I would say don't try and bite off more than you can chew. Don't try to monitor every single thing. Just start with one priority, whether that's your brand, your therapeutic area, one patient community, one business question that you want to answer that maybe you've tried to answer other ways, that social listening could potentially help with. We found that quite a bit in our social listening work with smaller pharma companies. Just make sure you build the capability before you start to scale it.
I would say also there, make sure you have the right partners in place. While your team may be small, you can use the right partners as an extension of that team, and add in layers of expertise. So I think this is a good one for Gabe since he gets to speak to all of our clients. Where are you finding the richest patient insights?
Everywhere. It's actually never in one place. We found that it's really across an ecosystem. Most prominent right now, where we're seeing a ton of success, is on Reddit, but it's even to the older platforms. We see success in Facebook groups, YouTube, patient forums, disease communities are an incredible wealth of information. creator content, search behavior, social conversations. Really, the key to everything is that the insight comes whenever you start connecting all of the dots and putting them all together to paint the picture.
That leads me to the next question I'm seeing, which is a hot topic right now. So I'm not surprised we saw it today. Are you seeing pharma brands using Reddit?
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, Gabe, because you've seen this.
This is one of my passions right now. I, for years and years and years, have been a Reddit reader. Throughout that time, whether I'm doing research on, cars or a sport or anything, um, I've been in there. But increasingly, as we've seen gaps on other social platforms, um, we're seeing the same. We're seeing patients, but they're not always actively participating. Um, Also, many brands begin by listening. Reddit provides rich, unfiltered conversations that reveal unmet needs. They show where the misconceptions are. Treatment experiences and patient language are often difficult to really understand, but that really paints the picture and really helps uncover how patients are communicating. And it's really, really hard to capture that anywhere else.
All right. Alana, what is the biggest mistake you see pharma brands making on social?
A tough one. But I would say, kind of coming back to understanding, it's brands that assume they already understand their patients in their communities in the disease area, that are already on the product, or not. I would say the biggest opportunity around that comes from challenging what we think we know with what patients are actually saying, which is where we've seen time and again, honestly, with listening projects and that we've done for clients, a gap emerging between what they assume and what is really being shown in the listening across the ecosystems that Gabe was talking about. So don't assume you already know your patients, because it is changing all the time, as those patient journeys slides showed. And we need to be more mindful of that, I would say.
All right. Okay, here's one. How do you convince leadership that social listening is a strategic capability rather than just a reporting function? Or even, let's go with, to add to that, how do you convince them to even turn it on?
I would say that it's kind of similar, where you need to start those conversations at the jump, obviously with leadership the same way as with compliance. But with leadership and executives, it's a lot of the times about coming to them with business questions that can be solved with listening. And again, that involves having a strong listening partner that can show that answers to those questions can be provided through listening. And it helps to show them how listening challenges assumptions that may be widely held within the company, uncovers unmet needs of patients, and just overall improves strategy and the strategic decisions across the organization, not just marketing, strategic decisions that leadership might need to take.
There's a common theme here today. It's know your audience and how to speak their language, whether it be externally to patients and HCPs or internally to all the stakeholders. That's interesting. Okay, I think we're going to end on this last question. This is a good one. If you could leave us with one piece of advice, what would it be?
I mean, I've got some. I don't know if you have any, Elizabeth, but I would say spend less time asking whether patients are hearing your message and more time asking whether you're actually hearing their message.
That's a great one. All right. Thank you both so much.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. And thank you to you, our audience, for submitting so many great questions. If they were not able to answer your specific question, we will do our best to follow up after the webinar. As a reminder, a recording of this session will be available on demand within 24 hours. We appreciate you all being here today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.